All right. So, you know the drill. You've been on the podcast.
Yeah, old brew.
Welcome to the Honest Jams podcast, the podcast where two friends had a strange idea.
Indeed.
To write a new song based on a prompt every week. This week's prompt is Stranger. I'm Al.
I'm Walker.
And with us today we have producer, composer, saxophonist. Saxophonist is better, right?
That's correct.
It's Emily Warden is here.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, friends.
How are you?
Great.
Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. How's it going?
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The world is insane. It's
Yeah.
Halloween.
Ooh,
Last we
spooky.
checked in with you, you had just finished up the 60-day songwriting challenge.
Yeah.
So was songwriting, did it feel a little different now that you're not having to produce daily results?
Yeah, definitely. I haven't written anything since then until this week.
Ooh, all right.
Took a bit of a break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
60 days in a row is a lot.
It was a lot. I used up all of the ideas that I had. Didn't have any more. It's funny how writing a song in a week was also a lot harder than writing a song in a day in some ways.
What do you mean?
Because when you're writing a song a day, you kind of lose the expectation of writing something good.
Oh, we've lost that a long time ago.
Yeah, you guys have been doing it pretty consistently, but I always think your stuff is good. But yeah, I don't know. I like to place undue stress on myself.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it makes sense. You have more time to craft the
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
So it's like, ideally, the product would be higher quality.
Yes.
Usually we like to start by just talking about where music came into your life. Do you remember kind of like your first experiences with music?
I played violin when I was probably 6 or 7, but I hated it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like holding my arm up. I was too lazy.
It is. Yeah, there's a couple instruments like that. Flute also.
Yeah.
I noticed you're not really playing the accordion as much these days. Does that have anything to do
That's like a back issue.
breaking weight?
Yeah.
40-pound object on
I've
you.
almost asked a few times. I've been like, oh, don't make him put on that
always
weight.
make me.
Okay.
I love that thing. I need
Carry
an excuse
that
to
weight.
play it. But violin was, so you,
Very short-lived.
was that like a school thing or something? Like why, did you pick the instrument?
No, I think my mom picked it for me.
Mhm.
She was like, you got to do something.
Yeah. Why don't parents pick viola? That's what they should pick.
Yeah. I don't know.
Viola's way better.
I think a lot of people don't know viola exists.
Yeah, even though it is objectively better than violin.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so violin was really short-lived. And then I took piano lessons, but I also didn't really stick with that too much. So nothing really stuck until I played saxophone in school band in 5th grade. And yeah, I just kind of got really into that. And
Was
that's-
that your choice?
Yeah, that was my choice. That's
Nice.
probably why it stuck.
Yeah.
Um,
So your parents were just like generally encouraging of you playing music from a young age, or?
Yeah, I would say so. They just wanted me to be doing something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they were encouraging. Neither of them are really musicians, though.
Oh, interesting.
So I was kind of the first
Yeah.
in my family, I guess.
And then did you kind of went through the school band route, or were you taking like private lessons and stuff like that too?
Yeah, a little bit of both. I think I just did school band for the first 2 years. I had a really great elementary school band teacher, Mr. Mahaffey.
Just having elementary school band in general is a unique thing, I feel like. I didn't
yeah.
experience band until middle
Besides
school.
the recorder's class,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Everyone's hot cross buns.
Well,
Oh, God.
all together
We also
now.
went to like a pretty hippie school too, I feel like,
That's
where
true.
like music was encouraged.
But even then, anybody's going to be turned off from music if your only experience of it is 30 recorders playing at once of the cheapest standard.
Yeah, it's really, really, anti.
I remember being annoyed that I didn't have access to more notes. Playing
Definitely.
the recorder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no Altissimo recorder notes.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
a shame.
You got to get those fancy recorders.
Oh, yeah.
So, but you had band in elementary school?
I mean, 5th grade, so
Right.
yeah.
The end of it?
Yeah. I guess it was all one school because I'm from Vermont and schools are little there, so it was just all like K through 8.
Oh, okay. So that makes sense.
Yeah, it's pretty great and lucky, I realize now, like learning about other people's public school experiences. Yeah.
What did you like about the teacher?
He was really fun. He was, tough, but like in a loving way.
Mm-hmm.
He would pick on us, but you knew it was coming from a good place.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, unless you were a drummer, and then it was like, nope, you're trouble.
Yeah.
And he was just really encouraging of me.
I feel like my recollection of being in band, the kids who take up percussion are oftentimes the kids that feel like they have like the shortest attention spans.
Yeah.
But those roles in band is just to like wait around and do nothing for
Yeah,
most of the
that's
time.
fucked up. That's so true.
I just had that realization. It's interesting.
Yeah. Oof. Man. Why?
So then you rose through the ranks of your band. Yeah.
Yes.
And were you kind of like developing an identity as a musician throughout that? Like, did you know you kind of just wanted to keep playing music?
Yeah, kind of. I always liked being a member of an ensemble.
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty like rigid, I guess. I don't know. I liked, like, for example, I didn't improvise for a long time, like until my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I didn't feel comfortable. So I liked having the music on the page to play and having that expectation.
Was saxophone kind of the main thing that you were doing all through your childhood?
Yeah, I dabbled in choir, but I never got really serious about it.
Yeah.
You have to choose a side. You have to be a band kid or a choir kid.
I chose all sides.
Yeah.
I chose drop out of school and only take music classes.
Yeah.
So then I just could take all of them.
Wait,
basically.
why have I not heard this dropping out of school story?
When I was like...
I too dropped out of school.
Yeah,
Whoa,
I think we've
you guys
talked about
are
it
so
before,
cool.
I feel like. Maybe.
And look at us now.
Yeah, I basically was like homeschooled, which mean in Oregon, you're as a homeschool student, you're the school is required to allow you to take like extracurricular stuff. So I basically just took all the music classes, choir, jazz band, and band. I think band I stopped taking because I just stopped liking it very much. And like marching band, not a fan.
Oh.
Were you in marching band?
Yeah, we had to do marching band.
Yeah, we did too.
Yeah.
And we had to like attend a certain amount of like football games, and the football team was really good. They would often go to like the state championship in those games, and we would be required to go on those trips. And
Ew.
Yeah.
Oh, gross.
Yeah.
And you
And,
have
like,
like
march
even
on the
less,
field.
even less of like an emotional investment in the team because I'm just
Totally.
showing up for band.
Yeah. Ugh. Yeah. That would.
And the band outfits were always these like they were passed down like through the years, so you just got like the random person's outfit that maybe fit you, maybe
Yeah.
didn't fit you.
Yeah, ours were from like 1940,
Ugh.
and we had these tall furry hats.
Mm-hmm.
And the suits were wool, which was great for like Labor Day. That's the one that's in the fall, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But not so good for like Memorial Day when it's hot out.
Ugh.
Yeah, I guess marching band did kind of suck.
So you just played kind of like in institutional settings basically all through childhood?
Yeah.
And then when you got out of school...
Well, in high school, I started getting really into classical saxophone, which is a thing.
Yeah,
It's,
it's an amazing thing.
It's amazing. It's very kind of esoteric. Like only classical saxophonists seem to really know anything about it. But yeah, so I did like all state band and all of that kind of competitive stuff. And I guess I guess I really liked that and kind of thrived on that.
Yeah, it's nice those settings because when you're in your band or whatever, the people that you're playing with are just people that, for whatever reason are in band. Like they don't necessarily, they might have never worked on their instrument in their entire life, but they just were in band their entire life.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, when you go to those all-state situations, you're like, oh, these are like people, like all these people care about this on some level.
Yeah, we're really making music now. We're making magic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and meeting other kids from other schools and stuff. That was really fun.
Staying in a giant hotel with
or like
lots of debauchery in those
guest
situations.
houses. Yeah,
sneaking out of the girls' hotel room over to see what the boys are up to.
Yeah.
We were just all in the same, like, just gigantic Marriott or whatever. Often those all-state things, I feel like.
That's great.
Yeah.
Just
Weird.
Smoking weed.
Those are the kids that I hung out with for sure.
Our choir wasn't that debaucherous, but at the state competition, we got marked down for cleavage. And the sopranos in the front row.
Of course, it was the sopranos.
Yeah. The sopranos were all blonde. The altos were all brunette. I'm not lying.
What?
Yeah, it's crazy. And I feel like whenever there was a combination band chorus function, you look over at the chorus side of things and everyone's just like making out. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, all those stereotypes, there is maybe something to it.
I think so. Yeah.
How did you kind of like know you wanted to just like keep moving on with music in general? What did you do after high school?
I went to college and I was actually pretty sure that music was the one thing that I didn't want to major in.
Do you regret that decision now?
No. I mean, I don't know. No regrets, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought I wanted to do like international relations or, something that sounded flashy and successful
Useful.
or whatever. Useful. Yeah. But then I didn't really get that into anything else. And
were you taking music classes in college?
Yeah, I ended up like being in some of the ensembles and stuff, and then the music department was like, they were really like supportive and nice, and I just enjoyed it. So yeah, so I did end up majoring in music, mostly in classical saxophone, but also studied a little bit of improvisation and like arranging and composition a little bit. So yeah.
So there was room for classical saxophoning in... Are a lot of those pieces like solo pieces?
Yeah, a lot of the pieces are solo pieces or quartet. I was in a sax quartet.
Ooh, that's fun.
Yeah, that's super fun.
Like all the different saxophones represented? Is that what that is usually?
Yeah, the whole spectrum.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's super fun. I miss that a lot, actually.
Yeah, hard to find
a
soprano and a bari sax player.
I know. Yes, very much. Yeah, so I like ended up playing a concerto with the orchestra at my college and stuff, and that was
what concerto?
Sick. It was the Von Koch concerto.
I don't know that.
It's really cool, but again, like very obscure, sort of.
That must feel crazy. I've never done that before. Like that must feel so intense to be like one soloist in front of 70 people.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and I'm sure I'll never get to do that again.
Don't be so sure.
Yeah, I don't know. Orchestras. There's not a lot
dying.
of them. Yeah. So that was cool. I tried to major in other things, but I guess I was just kind of like, well, it's a bachelor's degree, like,
right.
It's awesome, but like also
just pursue the things that you want to be doing.
Yeah, and I was lucky enough to be able to do that. So yeah, here I am.
Did you have an idea of what you wanted to kind of like, how that you wanted that to move forward? Like, were you thinking like you'll be a classical saxophonist?
Yeah, I was on that track and was thinking like of maybe getting into academia, because I mean that's kind of where you go with that.
Teaching.
Yeah, but then I think my junior year or so I burned out pretty hard, but I was like too far along, so I was just kind of like I gotta finish. Yeah.
What do you mean you burned out?
I just wasn't like finding meaning in it anymore, in the music that I was playing and the environment that I would be playing it in.
What do you think that was?
I don't know. Just kind of growing up and realizing that it just wasn't my my identity, and it was very competitive, and I didn't like that about it anymore.
Did your exposure to improvisation contribute to that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I had always listened to a lot of jazz and improvisational music, and really I wanted to be a part of that world, but I was too scared. So kind of breaking that, I don't know, that bubble was an important turning point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a similar experience with classical music. For me, a lot of what was encouraged in that environment was just kind of technical mastery, or that seems like the kind of primary thing that gets kind of hammered into you, or at least that was my experience. And for me, it was just about okay, what are we saying with this thing? And I had to kind of go through that period where I was what is this for, in order to kind of realize that it wasn't getting me what I wanted out of music in general.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. It's a lot of impressing people with technical mastery and with musicality and interpretation of a written piece.
But not all of them are accepted.
Yeah.
You know, you can't play fucking Mozart in swing. You know, people aren't, that might be acceptable in a pop music context, but if you did that kind of in a formal recital hall, it just doesn't, people don't think that's correct.
Right. Yeah.
And I just don't believe in a correct way of doing things.
Totally. Yeah. I dig that. Mm-hmm.
So what did you then, you went through the whole process, but how did you kind of discover yourself again?
Still working on that. Still working on that. Yeah, I don't know. I finished school and lived through my 20s and played in a weird marching band with other little projects.
What does that mean?
It's a marching band. We dressed up in wild costumes. And
was it March 4th?
No, it was Love Bomb Go Go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is that in Portland?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It was formed by some former members of March 4th.
Uh-huh.
And that was fun to do, kind of guerrilla music, we just jump off a bus and go play in the street.
Yeah.
And I just kind of began to experiment a little bit more, mess around with looping and
composing your own stuff.
Yeah, and singing and stuff. I didn't really start to write songs where I was singing until I was probably 25 or 26. So yeah, I came to it a little later than I think a lot of people.
What encouraged that, do you think?
I'm just tired of not doing it. Yeah.
You had something to say.
Yeah, tired of wanting to do it and not, feeling able to or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you then discover recording music too, or were you just...
I was pretty much just writing, had my loop pedal and my 57 and a little microKORG and just kind of messed around with that. And I guess I did some recording in GarageBand, but never high quality. Yeah.
Sure. But that was kind of the beginning of learning about that process.
Yeah, I would say so.
This is a tangent, but did your microKORG come with the vocoder attachment?
Yeah, buddy.
I love that thing.
I love those microKORGs.
Yeah. Yeah, they're fun. I don't know. I kind of was just experimenting with, figuring out what I wanted my sound to sound like. And then I formed a band called Just Pretend. That was a trio. And I played keys and did looping and saxophone and wrote the songs. And yeah, we played for a little while, or at least until the pandemic hit, really. Yeah, really just since the pandemic, I started getting more into production and taking that a little more seriously, trying to make things sound solid.
Yeah.
Or correct. Air quotes. Yeah.
What do you mean by that? Just learning about,
I guess, just higher quality, learning a little bit about audio and more about synthesizers and putting songs together.
Cool. Well, we're excited to hear what you made for the podcast.
Thanks.
But as you know, before we do this little segment.
What does the internet say on the topic of the day? And if it's wrong, you can let us know by using the internet too.
There are a lot of ways to go this week.
Yeah.
With Stranger.
Stranger's very broad.
Is it a person you don't know, or is it a weirder thing than something else? I ended up going with some strange but true facts, of which I've got 3. But before we get into that, the first thing I came across was just something so ubiquitous from my childhood that I never really thought it through. But I'm sure you guys remember the Stranger Danger campaign that started in the 60s.
Totally.
Which is so, at this point, it just seems so backwards minded.
Yeah.
Because it was so detrimental. I mean, there was a lot of fear, and some irrational fear, I mean, statistically, about children being abducted by strangers. So this campaign, may possibly have saved a few abductions, but what it did was normalize the idea that people family and friends of family, or someone from a church you go to or something like that those people are not a threat. And I'm glad we're getting off of that now, and have some friends who are into childhood education, and it's a lot more now about consent and not being asked to keep a secret from those you trust. So that makes sense.
Those are good lessons.
Just hadn't really thought about the whole stranger danger thing, changing from a society that let kids just run everywhere all day long, which I still had that. Living in small towns as a kid, I had that experience for sure. But in a small town, everyone. There is not a stranger.
Yeah.
Yet the abuse happens, and more of it happens.
Right.
So that one just struck me just from the word stranger. But now, on to 3 strange but true facts. Every week I find some new website that I've never heard of.
What is it?
Show Best of Life Online. Okay.
The best of life online.
Number 1, a meteor exploded over Earth with the force of 10 atomic bombs, and everyone missed it. You'd think that we would capture that, NASA or somebody would capture it. But on December 18th, 2018, a meteor hit our atmosphere and exploded with a force that was 10 times the energy of the Hiroshima atomic bomb.
Whoa.
And it wasn't discovered by NASA scientists until after the fact. The reason was because it took place over the Bering Sea in an area that was close but not directly on the path of commercial flying between North America and Asia. So that's wild.
Wow.
One of the weirdest experiences I've ever had is, I think the phenomenon is called a fireball, and it's like debris like burning up in the atmosphere. I was just driving up Fremont, and all of a sudden, like in the sky, there was just this like
Earth debris or outer space debris?
Space debris. It lasted probably like 4 or 5 seconds. I could just see the whole like just flaming ball, thinking the world was about to end.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Oh my
insane.
gosh.
That is wild. This one, the number 2, is also related to space. It would only take 1 hour to drive to space.
What?
If you
Like you went 60 miles an hour or
if
something?
you got into your car, turned on the ignition, and drove
Right.
up the sky at 60 miles per hour,
Yeah.
exactly, it would take just 1 hour to get to outer space, according to astronomer Fred Hoyle. Of course, this is purely theoretical. And then the article
They're
says...
saying distance, though, basically.
Yeah. They say, but it sure is fun to think about. I mean, that's...
It is so unintuitive that it's like
Objectively
not
fun
that
to
far.
think about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very weird. All right, coming back down to earth for number 3. This one, let's make this
Wah,
one...
wah.
Let's make this one a guessing game. What do you two think is the cause behind most power outages in the U.S.?
Falling trees.
Oh, these are strange facts.
I guess that's not very strange.
It's got to be some kind of like human doing a dumb thing. That's broad.
Almost.
Turning
Well-
the microwave and the
Yeah. Rice cooker.
Yeah.
That's the classic one here.
That's for this house for sure. I should have said who, not what, because it's squirrels.
squirrels.
The American Public Power Association says that squirrels are the most frequent cause of power outages. The APA even developed a tracker called the Squirrel Index that analyzes the patterns and timing of squirrels' impact on electrical power systems. Turns out the peak times of the year for squirrel attacks are from May to June and October to November, so watch out because we're in that time. Typically, the squirrels cause problems by tunneling, chewing through electrical insulation, or becoming a current path between electrical conductors.
Eek.
And here's a quote from someone from the agency.
Yeah.
Frankly, the
Friend
number one
squirrel.
threat experienced to date by the U.S. electrical grid is squirrels.
Squirrels. They're the ones
It's
that are
big
really in
squirrel.
charge.
You gotta watch out for big
So
squirrels.
there's some strange but true facts. What did you find on the internet?
I didn't get anything quite as interesting as that. I did think I kind of looked at Wikipedia a little bit, saw they actually had an
List
entry
of
about
strange
stranger stuff. I should have done a list of strange stuff. One thing I hadn't really thought about is that the concept of stranger would be kind of like different depending on cultural norms. So different cultures just have different ideas of what strangers are. And another interesting thing, they talk about kind of like when our conception of stranger even comes across, because infants basically don't like discriminate between people at all in that way.
Because they don't understand what they look like.
They don't understand object permanence. So once they...
And when they get older, they're more afraid of people who don't look like their parents and themselves. That's a later...
It's true, right. Once they develop object permanence, which is the ability to understand that when you look away from something, it still exists, then they start differentiating between people. And there's studies that they prefer, when it is a stranger, they prefer people that are similar, like peers, similar in age, and also that look like them.
I read something along those lines. It was a psychological studies that was done with people that found how you come to trust, how much you trust a new person you've never met.
Right.
And this is sad, but I feel like true even in my own experience. It depends on if their looks remind you of someone that you've had good experiences with or bad experiences with. So if someone looks like your beloved uncle, you'll trust them right away. But if they look like your ex that snubbed you, then you won't. They'll have to work to...
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I've experienced that.
That's kind of related to this other concept that they talk about called like strangers on a train, where people also with a stranger as opposed to somebody that they know, oftentimes they'll be much more willing to like disclose personal information to strangers, which is definitely my experience, like just talking to people in bars or whatever, like just random people.
Well, you don't have the repercussion of your gossip coming back around to bite you in the ass.
But not even gossip. Like
Hopefully.
for me, I mean, I'm just like naturally inquisitive and interested in people. So I think that also unlocks this thing in them. But like I often will have conversations with strangers in those, especially those kind of settings where people are like drinking or whatever, where people will disclose like just personal information about themselves, their lives, that is just not things that they normally talk about with people.
Right, because their perception of you and your perception of them is a blank slate. So when you're trying to I've been guilty of that TMI my whole life, you know, the trauma I've been to, where I'm trying to explain who I am, and I'm like, well, my brother died, and then all that, you know, and I'm just explaining basic major life events, but then it's like, oh, okay, that's maybe too much.
Well, it depends the context of the conversation, the openness. But yeah, I just think it's interesting that people, I have that. Yeah, maybe it has something to do with that too, what you're saying, where it's like that you understand the context of the person if you know them, so you can just like shoot the shit sometimes rather than just everything be the most intense conversation in the world.
Yeah. Sometimes I also feel like it's easier to play music for strangers than for people I know, or like it's easier to play like a bigger show that, you know, everyone's in the dark and you can't really see the audience versus like a small little living room show when you can see everyone's face and you know them. And
do you guys ever, back when we were playing shows, look out among the crowd, and it can be like a huge crowd, and you pick out one person who's like looking like they're not quite, it's not getting through, you know?
Of course.
And then you're watching them the whole time, like
worrying.
You just stare into their eyes.
And then eventually
when they comply.
And then when later on in the set they get into it and they're bobbing your head, you're like, I got you.
That's right.
It took some time.
Showed you. There's also this physics property called strangeness. There's no way I can really explain what it is, but it has to do with like particles. There's apparently way more particles than I was ever aware of. I don't know. It's something to do with
how many particles are there?
The quark structure of matter. I mean, I can find it right now if you want. This Wikipedia says it's introduced to refine the understanding of a quark structure of matter. It has unraveled a new property of particles and quantum number describing a large group of strongly interacting strange particles. So there's these strange particles. Strangeness is an excited state of matter, and its decay is governed by CKM mixing.
I wonder if that's related to spooky action. Isn't that a scientific term?
I think so too.
Really?
Yeah, perfect for Halloween.
Yeah.
What is a
spooky action?
Spooky action at a distance or something? I can't really follow through with that. It's something scientific.
In physics, action at a distance is the concept that an object can be moved, changed, or otherwise affected without being physically touched by another object. That is, it is the non-local interaction of objects that are separated in space. That makes sense.
It's like you with that audience member. That's spooky action.
Spooking them into action.
So there was, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting your portion of this.
I'm done.
But there was one more psychological, I shopped around a lot this week. There's one more psychological study that they did with people who they put into 3 different rooms, and then they played a game with them. It was kind of like a prisoner's dilemma game where they were given a certain amount of money, and then if they agreed to give the money to somebody else and that person agreed to stay in the room instead of leave, they would all get rewarded. But there was a way that you could give your money, and then if that person just decided to leave, you would be left with less money depending on how much you gave away. And in one of the rooms, it was just a plain meeting room. In the second room, they put peppermint scent. And in the third room, they put lavender scent. And they found that the lavender scented room, there was no difference between the peppermint and the unscented room. But the lavender room, people were more generous, and more people ended up benefiting from the money. So more money was made in general. And they thought that it was because it's a natural relaxant. It's like it has a calming effect. So people were in a more calm state when dealing with strangers around money and resources. Kind of interesting.
So carry around your lavender sachets.
So yeah,
Just throw lavender oil on people.
Yeah.
Relax.
This is a good time to be throwing liquids on people.
Yeah, absolutely. Never been a better time.
That's what the internet said.
Okay, should we get into some songs?
Yeah.
What did you make this week? What did you make this week? Tell us all about it, 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 tell us all about it.
You want to go first, Emily?
Yeah, sure.
What did you make? Do you want us to know anything about it before we hear it?
Yeah, I won't say too much about it. I was basically thinking about how, you start off as strangers with someone, and then they can become really close, and you can read their mind, and they can read your mind. Maybe they're like a lover or just like a best friend. And then sometimes they stay familiar, and then sometimes they become strangers again. And yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
Cool.
So,
Does it have a name?
yes, Once We Were Strangers.
Once we were strangers, distant bodies round the same old sun, had a pull in your eyes. Over time, two beings became one. What a strange collision, feeling all the fragments of our lives synthesized to vision.
You had me at clarinet.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, that big major chord on the wind instruments right before the audio sample of the people talking.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
triumphant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the whole
Building-
arrangement.
Building up. Yeah, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I wanted to thank you, Eyal, for encouraging me to pick up my clarinet
Oh, yeah.
again.
Hell yeah.
I hadn't really been playing much until Eyal asked me to play with him for his release show. So,
Yeah.
and then I've been diddling around on my clarinet ever
It's such a
since.
satisfying instrument to play. Like, it just feels so good to play it for some reason.
It's so emotive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The like resonant tone of it, or it's just like right in the frequency. I think that's why I said earlier like viola over violin, because it's like similar thing where it's like those are the for some reason those
Wait,
frequencies.
so what's the violin in this analogy then?
Flute probably. The flute's better than violin though.
Yeah.
We're really
An
alienating
oboe,
our
perhaps?
future violinist demographic guest.
There's certainly beautiful violin playing out in the world. It's just like a little. I'm always surprised that it's so dominant. Maybe it's just because over time it was like it pierced through the
Yeah.
sound so much better than
Right.
other instruments.
Before
But
amplification.
It's represented
especially.
pretty well in Western music, I would say. We don't
yeah,
have to feel
that's what I'm
bad.
saying. Overly represented.
Violin is the guitar of the orchestra then.
Yeah. The soprano of the orchestra.
So what was the audio sample? I couldn't quite make
Oh, yeah.
out some of it. What was that from?
Yeah, it was from, I found this movie on YouTube called Mirage that was made in 1965. Gregory Peck is in it, and it's a man who walks down a stairway in a high rise during a power outage caused by squirrels, probably. And he has amnesia. And so the movie, which I haven't watched the whole thing, is him kind of piecing his life together and realizing that he had a part in some horrible death.
The original Memento.
Yeah, I guess so. It looks really cool. I just kind of stumbled across it, and Quincy Jones did the score.
Oh, cool.
So I heard some glimpses of that, and it sounded gorgeous. But yeah, it seemed to tie into the theme really well. I was I was super depressed this week, actually, and I was just like really struggling to find words to go in that part, and I just couldn't do it. So I borrowed some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all about
familiar
that
with
here.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's also like it does allowing yourself to do those things. Like it's like you get this like more impressionistic vibe around the thing where like people can then like project onto whatever the meaning is. Like you don't always have to say what it is, because
Yeah.
music does such a good job of, especially when it's so nicely arranged and orchestrated.
Yeah, it gave another layer to where that there's the female voice and the male voice, and to me it seemed like, oh, these are the you and I of the song.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking
cool.
that.
Just a few instruments in there, right? And some keyboards, and is that all kind of like software instruments?
Yes, that
Those
was all
sounds-
software except for my voice and the clarinet.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, some of them were free. There's like a really nice free piano from Spitfire Audio. It's called Soft Piano. They have a lot of cool free sounds.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then also messing around like with production, like you were saying.
Yeah.
How do you make those decisions? Is it like this needs something here, I'm gonna just fuck around with the thing, or do you have kind of like an idea of what you want it to do and then you try to make that happen?
Yeah, basically that. Yeah, I'm not super methodical or like technically specific. So I'm kind of just messing around at this point.
I'll see what this crazy
yeah.
delay preset does. And then
Exactly.
turn some knobs.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
And then, yeah, it all ended up coming together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you.
That's great.
Should we share a song?
Yeah, who's gonna be next?
Oh, God, I feel like I haven't gone first in a bit.
All right.
What do I want to say? This is the first one in a bit that I felt. Ooh, there's a truck.
Whoa. It's a bass truck.
Bass truck. Can I get a little more bass truck on this track? This is the first one in a bit that I felt kind of like connected again with like my
Oh,
own
good.
feelings.
Yay.
Just
I feel like-
work through the pain or the nothingness.
Yeah.
right? Just keep
That's
getting
all we
on
can do.
I think it was
the
actually
workstation.
talking with Ethan a little bit and reconnecting with the idea of, because oftentimes I'll use songs like he was saying, Ethan Fox Tucker, who we had on, he was talking about how he uses it as kind of like a journal rather than like finding a word and trying to like come up with like a clever idea. For whatever reason this week, it was more effective to just kind of like, how do I feel about this thing? Like, let's just like create like a constellation of emotions just through like words.
Yeah, because it's a prompt, not a homework assignment.
Well,
It's not a homework
sometimes
assignment?
sometimes it feels like a homework assignment. I tend to procrastinate like I do with homework assignments,
Yep. I hear that.
but not when I'm feeling like inspired.
I never get tired beating my heart against your grace. I never feel like enough unless I see your smiling face. I'm always disappointed in every expectation that I place on you, and in the end I always blame it on the self I knew. Feel like a stranger to myself, sinking like a stone in the ocean, season after season. I should know me enough by now. I should know me enough to say what's good for me or what to cast away. But with you I don't. You always send a message with a puzzle I can never break. I never give myself a break to see inside mistakes I make again and again and feel like a stranger to myself, sinking like a stone in the ocean, season after season. I should know me enough by now. I should know me enough to say what's good for me or what to cast away. But with you I don't. Sinking like a stone again, 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 again. Sinking like a stone again, 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 again. Sinking like a stone. I feel like a stranger to myself, sinking like a stone in the ocean, season after season. I should know me enough by now. I should know me enough to say what's good for me or what to cast away.
Nice.
Wow. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know. We've been talking a lot about lyric writing. I feel like maybe
Mm-hmm.
I've just been thinking about it a lot, but it's just interesting to me, like to like approach it as I'm just gonna feel something and then have words that connect to those feelings, but they don't necessarily have to be all like referring to the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Then it kind of becomes, it's kind of like what I was saying with the sample that you had, where it's like it feels like then it becomes this kind of like impressionistic wash of emotion that like a person can interpret in so many different ways, even though like I have some clear ideas about like what the lines are about. Some things that are more kind of like this idea of like unrequited love. There's some things that are like kind of talking to like the muse. There's some things that are kind of like talking about dependency. I mean, it's all, I think, about kind of like relationship in a certain way, personal responsibility for relationship and consent, nobody owing you anything. And then like drawing boundaries, I think, in relation to just like a bunch of different things.
Boundaries and all that with like interpersonal relationships are really interesting if you look through that lens at your relationship with yourself or your better self or your worse self or anything of that. So I feel like the chorus here really does, even though there's a lot of different meaning to be found in the verses, the chorus really did bring it together with the I'm speaking to myself. You know?
Yeah.
In that way.
I feel like the settings of your like arrangement and stuff really painted the picture in an awesome way. Like the way that the kick kind of shifted around made me think of like a stone kind of sinking. I guess it would kind of just go straight to the bottom, but I was picturing it like kind of, you know.
I mean, the ocean's big. It takes a while.
That's true. Yeah, kind of going back and forth
Bounce off an otter's belly.
Yeah.
Maybe a whale swallows it and poops it out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then like the waviness of like the again and again and again and again. Yeah. I really like that.
I also know, like, I didn't even know. I mean, it kind of, I talk in the first line is kind of like a heartbeat line, and there's kind of like that heartbeat happening in the kick. I didn't even notice it. The kick was fun because I don't know if I've really ever done this where I played all the drums I just played live through a MIDI controller, but I was triggering two different like kits at the same time. So there's this more kind of like acoustic-y brush kit, and then there's like an electronic 808 sound, I think, that I had warped. I just like the mix of that kind of like organic feeling thing, but then the it's hard to get the kind of like that deep resonance that some electronic kits can have.
Yeah, for sure.
Out of just those acoustic samples. But yeah, I think that's about all I got to say about that.
Nice one.
Yeah, hit right in the feels.
Glad you got your connection back.
Yeah, well, we'll see how long it lasts.
Now, I, on the other hand, spent more time going back and forth between this idea is horrible, I don't know what I'm doing, let me start something else. Like, more of that happened this week than any other week of our 40 plus songs we've done on the podcast. Okay.
Like you had multiple ideas?
No, I just had a lot of different feelings about the ideas as I was going through. And it truth window, straight up into the truth window. One of them was I recorded this drum part just on one mic, and it was really fun to do it. But after I listened to it back, I thought, this is the dumbest 90s beat. This is some like second-rate 90s R&B like garbage.
Oh, I'm going to be so into this, I bet.
And then, so the song has trumpet. It wanted trumpet. So I got Victor in there. And thanks, Victor, for recording this episode, by the way, at Destination Universe. I got him to play the part just along to a metronome, and then when I was mixing the trumpet, adding a little reverb, I was like, get a load of this really dumbass beat, and I just unmuted it, and he was like, I love that. And I really was like complete 180 on it from how I felt about it. But I mean, anything that you record yourself, you know, you secretly really want to like it.
Yeah.
But like, I just thought, this is not right for the song. This is terrible. It just felt fun to play, and that's not what should make good music or whatever. And
is it? I don't know. Maybe it is.
I mean, I started with the kabasa, so that's the little thing that looks like a lint roller with like pearl necklaces around it. And
I've never heard it described that way.
So the first track, I'm just sitting there grooving to a metronome, just going and like I had a really busy kabasa track that I got rid of, actually. So I did change some stuff throughout, but it scares me to my core, the notion that my opinion of something can be 100% changed by someone else in like 1 second. Like, that's really frightening. I really don't like to think of myself as a pushover or someone who likes things because other people do.
Well, maybe you actually did like it, but you weren't giving yourself permission to like it because of like some kind of judgment you were making on yourself.
That's probably what happened here. That's exactly what happened here. But it was just like, it's scary when you have that feeling. And like, I don't know if you guys have ever, like, you go and see a band and you're like, I really don't like this or connect with it. It's whatever. It's other people's thing, but this isn't going to be me. And then, but like another song or two in, you find some element of it that you like, and then all of a sudden you're explaining why you like all of it to yourself. Like, no, this is great. Like,
well, yeah. I mean, I have this experience like playing Bach conventions, where I mean, aside from like the ones that everybody kind of knows, you know, you don't know that you know them, but you know them. Whenever I was learning like new ones that I'd never heard before, I just would never, like, I didn't understand it, you know, like I just didn't get it on whatever reason, for whatever reason. But as I practiced it, like over time, or maybe like I'd listen to, I mean, when I was a kid, I wouldn't even, like, there wasn't YouTube and shit. You couldn't just like hear recordings of stuff. So you'd have to just play it in order to figure it out.
Yeah.
And it just would take a while to kind of like understand, to, you know, grok it. That sometimes happens with music, where it's like somebody else's understanding of it can like make you understand it better. I mean, I'm sure there's also like, you know, social influence of just like wanting to be liked and all that kind of stuff also involved in it, but it's
I just don't like the wishy-washy element of like, I can't tell. Can't I just have a little chat with myself and be like, do you like this? Is it good? Accept it. Stand by that cheesy 90s beat if you're going to do it.
Right.
But anyway, I'm happy with how my song turned out. It ended up in the 90s R&B / indie rock, whatever that thing is.
Hell yeah.
I'm excited about the name of it.
So I feel I should explain more. So I started out actually with a melody idea I had apparently in July, and I sent you a little clip there that says idea. I didn't even dignify it with any further description. It just said idea in my phone.
What would prompt you to then listen to it again?
Because I thought, let me go find the smallest idea, the smallest chunk of melody that I have.
So you're just looking for time?
I was just looking for one little, like, not a whole progression that I would then add some lyrics about Stranger to, but just one tiny little kernel, so then I could still make something fresh. But like, so I found this one that was pretty short, and it was just called Idea. Yeah, and it just repeats, so that's enough out of that.
Nice.
But so I found that, and I was thinking some kind of orchestral thing, so trumpet. So that's what the idea was that I had so far. So I recorded with that melody in mind, without actually recording the melody first. This may have been what tripped me up too, doing the lamp roller track first, and then I added the drums to that, and then I added the vibes with the chord outline. And then I added the bass. So everything was just in this weird order how I did it. And at first my lyrical idea was going to be that sort of tough love, like diary entry thing that we were kind of already talking about last week. And so I had one lyric in my phone. It was like, hey, listen up, stranger. And it was like, I was going to like to really tell myself some things, and I just like it had no steam. It just had no steam. So I abandoned that, and then I thought, what can I do on the couch lying down? So I looked for a
I like that motivation.
Yeah, big mood.
I knew there had to be a movie called The Stranger. There are a lot of them, actually.
Yeah.
Is there a Hitchcock one?
Orson Welles.
And
that's the one I ended up watching, 1946.
Oh, that's what you were watching. I was like, what motivated? Because I just walked in on it eating dinner one night.
That was so weird. You were eating and you came in and you looked, and it was right when he was talking about how the guy they're searching for was like an American war criminal during World War II that actually was the one that designed the concentration camps. His name was Franz Kindler, the character's name. And the movie is all about Edward G. Robinson coming to track him down in his quiet little New England life that he'd settled into. And he's teaching at this high school, and he's a beloved pillar of the community, basically. But he's this secret Nazi war criminal. And
the stranger.
The stranger. And so, you came in during that scene, and like it was super intense, like reveal of all this like Nazi stuff. And I'm just like, what are you? I wanted to say something, but I didn't want to spoil.
I don't think
that
I
it
was
called
even.
The Stranger.
Oh yeah. That's funny.
I didn't want to be like, I'm doing research to spoil the surprise. So that was a weird
All I was
moment.
thinking is, why is she watching this?
Hey, you know what?
It seemed, actually at first, when I was in the kitchen, here's what I thought. So I was heating up food in the kitchen, and I just like peeked around I was like at the sink or something. I just saw you were watching something in black and white, and I was like listening to it a little bit.
In the middle of the afternoon.
Just hearing, yeah,
with all the curtains drawn.
just hearing like a dark, or just hearing like the tones of people's voices. I don't think I was even like really picking up on the dialogue or anything like that. And my immediate assumption was that it was just like an experimental Star Trek episode. And I even like glanced and thought that like one of the characters like looked like Riker, I think, or something, and that kind of like reinforced it in my head until I came out and actually looked at what you're watching, and I was like, oh, this is. Then I was like, why does this happen? It just seemed very out of character for you to be watching that movie, but I didn't really pick up on what the dialogue actually was. I don't think. I think I was just kind of like.
I'm gonna go ahead and recommend it because
It's
it
a
was
classic,
a really
right?
good movie. It is a classic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to watch more Orson Welles movies. I haven't looked up controversy around him yet. So, you know, like discovering old things these days where you're like, let me just spend 5 minutes and see whether it's worth my time to like
Old people in the
get
movie
all
industry.
into this old movies. But yeah, it was a really good movie. And as I was watching, I wrote down just lines of dialogue that I thought were interesting. Also just
Ooh, nice.
sort
That's
of
a good way to just like convince yourself that it's okay to watch a movie.
Exactly. Yeah. There was also descriptions, like descriptive stuff. They used a clock tower, an old clock tower that was getting restored throughout the movie, and it was really like, it was just really evocative, and hearing the chimes and like seeing all this really neat old giant clock tower was really cool. So I finished watching it. I had all these lines, and all of a sudden I realized, so I'm singing kind of about that character, about the Franz Kindler character, and then there were all of these similarities between that and something that's unfolding culturally right now, which is the bust up of the Nexium cult and prosecution of Keith Raniere, the leader of that cult. And there's all this symbolism. There's all this stuff in the movie, and for
I
you
should have
guys,
guessed that that's the Keith you were talking about.
So the song's called Uncool Keith because there's this rapper named Cool Keith, so this is Uncool
Don't I know
Keith.
it?
Heard of him.
But yeah, they had, like, I looked this thing up that was really, it really struck me. There's a cross country team from the high school where the guy teaches, and they're running around, and you know, you're wondering, are they going to find, you know, I don't want to give away everything in the movie, but it's a little bit menacing that this cross country team is running by and they're going to see some stuff. And the leader of the runners this is in black and white, but to me they look like a bright color, like a big handful of papers, just little slips. And as he's running, he's throwing them down by the handful. So I'm going to guess that they were maybe laying down a trail that would become like a racetrack for them, or they were finding their way back. This was like just throwing out these like trail markers essentially. And you learn later that they are trail markers, but I looked it up and I couldn't find anything about it at all. But
As like a thing that people do.
As a thing that's ever happened historically with cross-country running.
They were Hansel and Greteling it.
Yeah. So I never found out what the deal was with that, but I started writing about ribbons leading the path. And then it made me think about the stripe path, which is like what they do in
Do you know
the
this? The Nexium stuff? Okay.
Okay, so there's all these
It's a
documentaries
big,
out right now, and it's, you know, every time you watch one,
We were immediately. I mean,
I
we've
watch The
both
Vow,
listened to
yeah.
all. Oh, okay, the Vow.
So yeah, the stripes, they
The
gain
Vow,
their stripes
the
as
stripe
they go
path.
up in rank.
yeah,
Right.
but really they only got promoted if either they recruited enough people,
Right.
or it was supposed to be they finished the curriculum, but it was really only that, or if it was like an attractive woman that the leader
Right.
wanted to ultimately sleep with
Mm-hmm.
and try to turn into his sex slave,
Right.
as most cults turn out like that.
Yeah.
But there was all this similar stuff. So the stripe and the path, and there was one line where the guy's wife is gonna give away his identity, but she's still under his grasp, and so there's gonna be a party that night, and he wants to make sure she's acting natural, so he says perfect naturalness at all times, and it's like that frantic vibe of hiding things and everything has to be like this. It just reminded me so much of the cult. So then I realized, like, this is actually about Keith.
The
There it is.
uncool Keith.
Yeah.
That's the path that led you to Keith.
Cold counterfeit leader, too gloomy for the party to end. Before the angel circles round the belfry again. I can't wait until the crash, commit a crime and the earth is glass. Till the truth is too strong to deny. It's getting darker earlier, and the brightly colored ribbons light the path, but obscure the track. I'm focusing to focus, giving you shadow play, but when you move away, shadows stay. I can't wait until the crash, commit a crime and the earth is glass. Till the truth is too strong to deny. Won't wait before the chimes, perfect naturalness at all times. Till the truth is too strong to deny.
Sick.
Nice.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm glad you did not lose those drums.
Same.
Cool. It felt so good when I was doing it, and then when I listened back, I was like, "This is horrible."
If it feels good,
It does
then
conjure up
that's
the 90s, like
Yeah.
especially that the first time, like once you're in the verse doesn't do it as much, but
Yeah.
that lick definitely just like, I wonder what that, I guess it's just the tones are similar or something like that. The way the space is,
The drums or the vocal melody?
just the
the melody
with the
is-
trumpet.
oh,
yeah,
yeah.
that part to me is like very like that seems like a sample that would be in like a 90s hip hop song.
Totally.
You should send it to Cool Keith.
I don't know. I looked him up, and it's more abstract, surreal, yet raunchy
Yeah,
rhymes
right.
that he does. He performs under so many monikers, apparently, like
Oh,
Dr. Octagon, Black Elvis, Dr. Doom with 3 O's in the middle. There was a quote from him that said about playing so many alter egos and characters on stage. He said, "I don't even feel like a human being anymore."
whoa.
Yeah, I didn't listen to the music yet, but
I've heard a little Cool Keith. Yeah, I did. The raunchiness is kind of what
I think he's
stands
responsible
out to
for whatever band sampled, or rapper, whoever sampled Smack My Bitch Up, I think was it.
Oh, Prodigy.
credited. Yeah.
Or-
Yeah.
Prodigy.
Yeah.
That was sick. I really liked the vibes
Oh, thanks.
and the
Yeah.
bass and how it all came together.
One thing I think we all did was, and something that I've been more into lately is like just being pretty sparse with the parts and letting the minimal composition to kind of like keep the drive of the thing going, you know?
It's interesting that you say that, because I was listening through all of my tracks from the podcast and getting ready to release them on Bandcamp or something, and I was playing them through like a little like Bluetooth speaker, so it wasn't an ideal scenario, but I was listening through just to see how it would flow in order, and I thought, these are good songs, but they all sound like unfinished sparse demos that need like a whole
interesting.
bunch of like keyboard or something to fill them out more. But that was just, I was in kind of just a big self-doubt cloud of a few days.
Listening
Yeah.
on that Bluetooth speaker does some weird things. I don't know if I would trust that. That
Yeah.
that
Yeah, you can
specific
lose
speaker,
a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I shouldn't.
I don't know. There's something really like, I'm never quite satisfied with any mix, but then I'll put on like something like that it's somebody else made that I know I like, and it still doesn't do it for me in the same way. So
It's so weird when it's your own music or art or whatever that you're looking at, and like you can feel so differently about it.
Yeah.
Like me with that drum beat. I mean, it reminds me of like looking in the mirror and, you know, you can have like a shirt that looks nice or a new scarf or something, and you're like, wow, hey, I look great. And then other times, you know, it's just like,
and you're like, I'm a monster.
yeah. And it's like, oh, because I was wearing white instead of black, or like because my hair was kind of flat.
I think
something.
it's purely psychological. I mean, it's like the skill you have to develop, right? Like just recording stuff is
just
like
trust that it's good.
and to be able to like hear it accurately, or like, I mean, it's impossible at some point. It's like body dysmorphia or something. Like you develop like song dysmorphia, where it's like you just can't, you don't have the same concept as the people that are looking at it from the outside, because you are so intimately aware of like every nuance in the thing that you just can't hear it objectively. Like even when I listen back to the things that I write, oftentimes what I'll do is I'll try to turn off, like if it's something that has words, it's really hard for me not to anticipate the thing that's coming, that because I know it's coming, and I'll actually like be like experiencing the words in my mind as it's happening. And so what I always try to turn off that part of my brain and like experience objectively in some way, you know, where it's just like I'm experiencing the like layers of it and trying not to like get ahead of the thing to like anticipate. But it takes so much fucking concentration to like stay in that mind state. Like so most of the time I'll just be like almost mindlessly listening to it and not really like evaluating anything. And then when you get into the really evaluative mode, it's like, well, that's not how people listen to music anyway.
Yeah, no one's paying that much attention, like trying to find problems.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yet my tweaks I did on the mix this morning completely helped the song. 'Cause
Right.
the mix I made yesterday, I guess I was tuned out and not listening because the trumpet was about twice as loud as it needed to be somehow. Do you ever run off a mix and then you're like, how did that happen?
All the time.
Yeah.
And so then I ended up turning a bunch of stuff down slightly and then just turning it all up at the master lately, instead of like getting into the tug of war of turning one thing up and all of a sudden it's too cluttered and you gotta
turn
do
everything
that.
down,
like, or turn a couple things down. So that's what I tried. And I do want to say, I don't think if Keith hadn't have been sentenced this week, and did you read about that at all?
No,
Do you want me to shield you from knowing?
Oh, I don't care.
He got 120 years.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
And it's going to be somewhat of a solitary situation. He's that dangerous with people around him.
Sociopath.
Yeah. So
intelligent sociopaths are the worst.
So I think if he was still on the run or something, I don't think I would have wanted to give him the mental energy to like put that out there. I mean, I'm just devouring all the Reddit threads right now about the case. This morning I read, we're still waiting for sentencing, I think, on Allison Mack, who's an actress on Smallville, who's got very high up in the NXIVM organization. And so she and her wife, Nikki Klein, who was Callie on Battlestar Galactica, how weird is that?
Oh, they never mentioned that in any of the documentaries.
No, they glossed over it. But yeah, Callie and Boomer were both involved in NXIVM, Boomer from Battlestar. Anyway, I read just some affidavits of the Jane Doe complaints against him, of which there were more than 100. And it was like number 50 or something, was talking about how Allison Mack and Nikki Klein and Keith tried to start another organization within it called 10C, spelled T-E-N and then letter C. And it was just a ploy to get sorority girls from college connected with Keith so he could sleep with them. And it ultimately failed. But the weirdest part about it is it stood for The Emperor Has No Clothes. 10C. So he's one of these psychopaths that's like right out there in the open saying, and we're seeing from footage from their classes and all these documentaries, he gets off on leaving those crumbs and that trail out for people to go ahead and
he's like,
get.
it's all about power. So it's like, look at all these dummies that I'm like so obviously duping.
Yeah.
And then they fuck those people up so badly because they actually feel like dummies because they were.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ugh.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask an unrelated question.
Yeah.
Sure.
Which is, what is a...
You don't want to talk about NXIVM for another 30 minutes?
No, I do. But what is the vulgus?
Oh, now that is an example of me just looking up something on thesaurus.com for a synonym for, I think I looked up suckers, people, masses, just anything that just meant like the masses of people, and vulgus was
Yeah.
listed in there. It must be out of
Oh.
use. I don't hear it very much, but I was
Vulgar
just
must
like,
be related to that. That's interesting.
yeah, maybe so. It just means masses. It doesn't have necessarily a
Negative.
It didn't have a negative connotation.
Oh,
it
it
just
sounds
said the
negative.
masses. Yeah, but it did. It sounded cool, and
Yeah.
I've never used it or heard it before,
Yeah.
so we'll just trust thesaurus.com
Yeah.
on that one. Yeah, I like to just get new words in there
Totally.
occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that you usually remember what they mean?
I
after
will
you use
never
them?
forget vulgus.
Yeah. Never forget.
Never
We're
forget.
gonna bring it back.
Well, we did it.
Yeah.
Good job, everybody.
Yay.
Emily, is there anything you want to share with people before we go about things you're doing in the world?
Not a lot to promote. I'm doing a lot of staying home.
Yeah.
I am available for remote recording.
Ooh,
or
yeah.
saxophone or clarinet.
Voice, piano, production.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Totally. So, yeah, you can hire me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should hire her.
You should hire me. Yeah. How about
Agreed.
that? You can reach out to me on Instagram, Warden of Your Heart. And yeah,
They
I'm
call her One Take Warden.
some people do.
Well, that's what you told me.
You're one of them.
After, well, you told me to
Oh.
call you that.
Shh.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well,
Watch out, One Take Ricky Lake. There's a new one taker on the scene.
is Ricky Lake known as a one taker?
No, it's just something you say if you play a really good track. You
Oh.
only need one. You just
Snappy.
one take Ricky Lake over there.
Never heard
You
that.
haven't heard that one?
I like it.
But then again, you also introduced me to the S, the D.
Split the difference.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, that one works better on close bandmates
Totally.
than strangers.
Yeah, we're just going to ask the D.
Ooh, okay. Well, thanks for being here, Emily.
Yeah,
That was
thank
fun.
you.
Yeah.
There's only one thing left to say.
We can bang on pots and pans.
And still kick out some honest jams.
Honest Jams podcast is written, recorded, and produced by Eyal Alvis and A. Walker Spring, and edited by me. Reach us at honestjamspodcast@gmail.com. Special thanks to Victor Nash for mixing our theme. Special thanks to Oogie. And thank you for listening. We can't wait to hear what you make.